such great numbers. It's brilliant to see. Week 36, day 260, 8 months of apartheid Israel's genocide in Gaza. My name is Zoë Lawlor. I'm the chairperson of the Ireland-Palestine Solidarity Campaign. Last Sunday was Eid al-Adha, and instead of celebrating, people in Gaza spent their Eid holiday moving between graves, visiting the rubble of homes and going to hospitals. On Monday, 10 Palestinians were murdered in a targeted attack by Israeli occupation forces in Rafah. They were trying to organise aid and commercial goods coming in. And it's clear that the Israeli occupation forces don't just want starvation, they want chaos and anarchy, because they target anyone who is trying to organise the aid distribution. 6 children in Gaza, including a 2-year-old baby, were murdered on the first day of Eid. And Israeli forces torched and destroyed facilities at the Rafah crossing between the Gaza Strip and Egypt, including the arrival and departure halls. And this is the only non-Israeli exit point for Palestinians with the outside world. And this would possibly make it inoperational in the near future. So they are completely locking Gaza down and making it into an even bigger open-air prison than it already has been for the 17 years of illegal siege. 2 Israeli attacks on Nuseirat refugee camp killed 17 people overnight, and they destroyed residential complexes near Rafah. On Tuesday, it was reported that a senior doctor from Gaza, Dr. Iyad Rantisi, age 53, died last November under interrogation by the Shin Bet, Israel's internal security and torture service, 6 days after his detention. He was the director of the Kamal Adwan Hospital in Beit Lahia in the north of Gaza. And this is the second Palestinian doctor tortured to death by Israel that we know of, after Dr. Adnan al-Bursh. And think about these words, the second doctor tortured to death. What kind of regimes do that? And what kind of states like ours allow impunity for such crimes? Airstrike attacks on the Al-Rais family home in Nuseirat in central Gaza killed at least 8 people, and there were widespread airstrikes all over Gaza on Wednesday with multiple casualties. On Thursday, 7 Palestinians were killed in an Israeli airstrike targeting a house in Al Zaytun in the south of Gaza City, and Israeli occupation tanks fired on the Al Mawasi area where thousands of displaced Palestinians have set up tents. And again, Al Mawasi is the place they forced people to go to, and they said this is a safe area, and they go on our airwaves time after time telling us that Al Mawasi is a designated safe area for Palestinians. And this is a clear lie. It is another target zone for the Israeli occupation forces. Palestinian journalist Salim al-Sharafa was also murdered in an airstrike. On Friday, Israeli forces bombed displacement tents, municipal workers operating water wells and homes across Gaza, killing more than 100 people yesterday on one of the deadliest days for Palestinians in weeks. And before I came out, I heard the 12 o'clock news bulletin on RTE, and there was not one mention of Palestine on the news. So we have to keep talking about it. More than 100 people murdered, people in refugee camps, in tents, murdered, and nothing on our airwaves. Totally shameful. Artillery shelling and gunfire from Israeli tanks targeted the displaced people sheltering in Al Mawasi, which is an allegedly humanitarian zone. At least 25 people were killed in this attack and 50 wounded. And hours earlier, an Israeli airstrike hit a municipal facility in Gaza, killing at least 7 people, including 5 workers operating water wells. And this is a double crime because water is so scarce and polluted and dangerous to drink. So every well, every drop of water in Gaza is precious and is necessary for life. Another strike on a home in Al-Shati refugee camp killed 10 people and wounded 17. And right this morning, there's another massacre going on in Al-Shati camp in Gaza. And if you think about how we rightly commemorate and mourn days like Bloody Sunday, and how deeply painful it is for the people affected and their communities, how can we count the massacres in Gaza? How can we name them all and mark them all? An investigation this week identified 60 Palestinian families where at least 25 people were killed, sometimes 4 generations from the same bloodline, just between October and December. And do you remember Hind Rajab, the 6-year-old little girl who was murdered with her family while waiting to be rescued? One of the over 17,000 Palestinian children murdered in Gaza. We heard her tell the Palestine Red Crescent Society that she was afraid of the dark, and she pleaded with them to rescue her. And the ambulance crew that went to rescue her were murdered. Well, yesterday, an investigation by Forensic Architecture and Al Jazeera found that the car Hind was in was hit with 355 bullets, and finds it not plausible that an Israeli tank couldn't see children inside the car. It is not plausible that the shooter could not have seen that the car was occupied by civilians, including children. From the tank position indicated by the greatest alignment between entry and exit holes, we concluded that the shooter would have had a clear view of the car and its passengers. They had a clear view of a 6-year-old child that they chose to murder. How can Palestinians ever recover from this? So we have to mark these massacres as best we can. Don't let it go unremarked. Keep talking to people about it and keep demanding an end to it and keep showing up for Palestine. In the West Bank, Israel's ethnic cleansing and mass murder goes on apace as well. There was a report this week on how on the 21st of May, in a single hour, Israeli snipers killed 7 people just standing on the road at Jenin refugee camp. Israeli settlers forcibly evicted and stole the homes of the last 2 Palestinian families from Ain Samia in the West Bank, a little village, this week. They forced the last 2 Palestinian families out, which is the end of the Palestinian presence there. They attacked and terrorized the residents for weeks. Settlers and the army took advantage of the focus on Gaza to implement a settlement plan aimed at seizing large areas of the West Bank and the Jordan Valley. This is an old Israeli plan to annex the Jordan Valley, which was previously stopped by the international community but is now being executed quietly away from the media and official announcements. Since October 7th, the Israeli military and settler actions have led to the displacement of 25 Palestinian Bedouin, not families, not people, communities. That is 220 families and 1,277 people. 2 of the brothers from the village that I mentioned earlier, Khaled and Nasser Naimat, said they went out tending their flock of sheep, and they came back and their home had been invaded by illegal settlers and their families expelled and a settler outpost established right across from their post. And they said, "We'd sought nothing but a dignified life free from fear, and even that was taken from us." So apartheid Israel's ethnic cleansing of Palestinians is not just happening in Gaza, it's happening all over Palestine. On Thursday, Israeli forces murdered a 15-year-old in Kalkilia. Yesterday, they murdered 2 Palestinians in their car in Kalkilia in the West Bank. And since last week, 25 Palestinians in the West Bank have been murdered by Israel. Also, 24 children have been killed in Israeli airstrikes on the West Bank since last summer, since before last October, when the Israeli forces began deploying drones, planes and helicopters to carry out attacks in the occupied West Bank for the first time in decades. And more than 100 Palestinian children have been murdered in the West Bank since October. And I want to talk for a minute about the scholasticide in Gaza. Before the war, there were 796 schools in the Gaza Strip, 12 universities and higher education institutions. And Gaza had one of the lowest illiteracy rates in the world, with the percentage decreasing from 13% in 1997 to 1.8% in 2022, which shows you the value that Palestinians place on education despite all the obstacles put in front of them. Around 700,000 children and young people were enrolled in schools and universities out of the Strip's 2.3 million population. And in the ongoing bombardment, Israel has damaged or completely destroyed all universities and more than 80% of schools, and there has been no formal education in Gaza since last October. They have killed and wounded thousands of students and hundreds of teachers, including at least 100 professors. And on Friday, Israeli occupation forces killed Professor Abu Labda of the Islamic University of Gaza, along with his mother and his daughter, in a missile strike on their home in Gaza. And he was a signatory of a powerful open letter from Gaza that came out a couple of weeks ago from Palestinian academics and administrators to the world, calling for solidarity and citing their determination to keep educating their people. And the opening of their letter read, "We have come together as Palestinian academics and staff of Gaza universities to affirm our existence, the existence of our colleagues and our students, and the insistence on our future in the face of all current attempts to erase us. The Israeli occupation forces have demolished our buildings, but our universities live on. We reaffirm our collective determination to remain on our land and to resume teaching, study and research in Gaza at our own Palestinian universities at the earliest opportunity." Such a statement of intent and courage and resilience from Gaza, and now that professor, one of the signatories, has been murdered. If we look at the health situation, ever just catastrophic. There's no nappies, there's no formula, there's no baby food, and new mothers are struggling to keep their babies alive. There is no such thing now as a safe pregnancy or a birth. And again, where are all the girl boss feminists while Palestinian women are being denied their most basic rights? Children are starving to death in front of their desperate parents' eyes. Children needing special formula are most vulnerable and they're dying, and it is unbearable to watch their parents weeping and begging for the formula or a supplement when there are thousands of trucks being blocked from being let in by Israel just a couple of kilometers away. This is a crime of historic proportions. And Médecins Sans Frontières said its teams have been unable to bring any medical supplies into Gaza since the end of April, and Gaza is facing massive queues of trucks and perilous delays in the delivery of humanitarian assistance, and it warned that if it doesn't change, the situation doesn't change, it may have to stop or drastically reduce some of its medical activities in Gaza, which they have described as an unthinkable reality given the medical needs of the thousands of people in Gaza. And Joe Biden told us that Rafah was a red line, but that was another lie, because there is no medical facility functioning in Rafah, and the remaining residents and displaced families don't even have food or water. And the heat is now a huge problem, exacerbating this catastrophic situation. There's water contamination because the water is hot. There will be much more food spoilage because of the temperatures. There will be insects, mosquitoes, flies, dehydration, heat stroke, diarrhea, cholera, dysentery and hepatitis. So Israel's genocide comes in many forms, not just the dropping of bombs. And every week the situation of Palestinian prisoners also gets worse. 640 children have been arrested by Israeli occupation forces since last October. 640 children arrested. And according to the Commission of Detainees in Gaza, the number of Palestinian prisoners murdered in Israeli prisons since October has reached 54 that we know of. The Israeli occupation is subjecting detainees to terrifying, inhumane and unprecedented conditions. And at the moment there are 9,000 Palestinian prisoners, including 300 women, 635 children and 80 journalists in Israeli prisons. So when they talk about hostages, remember the Palestinian prisoners. They're not hostages, they're prisoners, because the system they're in is actually legal. That is a shame on the world. A 17-year-old Palestinian boy, Majid, was released the other day, and he said that the food that they get is one plate of food but divided between 8 children. And they re-arrested the Speaker of the Legislative Council, Aziz Dawig, the other day, just after releasing him from prison. This week, the US Congress voted to support another major arms sale to Israel that includes 50 F-15 fighter jets worth more than $18 billion. And will we see any of these troops go through Shannon Airport? Absolutely, because our government won't do anything to stop them. On Monday, the Israeli Defense Minister said its arms exports for 2023 hit a record in sales. So remember this, that war is profitable. And that's why we have to fight against this even harder. And Israel has been bombing Lebanon for months now and is also threatening war there. When will these warmongers and war criminals be reined in, and will our airport be used to facilitate another war on Lebanon? It remains deeply shameful and painful and so wrong that day after day, for 76 years, and now at such an escalated rate, that Israel can commit so many egregious crimes with total impunity, that our government still won't act, won't do one material thing that will impact Israel and start the ball rolling for other countries. Why can't our government take the lead and show some integrity and courage and reflect the will of the majority of the people here? We need immediate sanctions. The notion of diplomacy with this rogue, genocidal apartheid state is laughable. We cannot accept that. There must be action. We have to end all trade, all diplomatic relations immediately, and lobby for all other countries to do the same. But there was a huge BDS victory this week, because Intel, the tech giant, has stopped construction of a 25 billion factory in Israel. So this shows a shocking decline, apart from the war economy, in Israel's economy. And well before the genocide, they have been facing seismic economic challenges, especially in the high-tech industry, which accounts for half of all Israeli exports, and this was nosediving. And this makes it the increase in Irish trade with Israel even more shameful and more egregious, and it must stop immediately. But Intel is still deeply complicit in feeding Israel's genocidal war chest, so we keep escalating our boycott Intel campaign until complete divestment from apartheid Israel. And it's easy to feel helpless and useless. Some days I feel so totally useless. But we have to keep going. We have to show the Palestinian people that we stand with them. For all the people trying to survive, using the canopies from food drop parachutes to shelter themselves, trying to feed their families, maintaining their dignity and their spirit and their courage despite everything, rescuing each other, caring for each other, trying to grow food, trying to mind their pets, reporting to the outside world, writing poems and stories, painting and living. For Palestinians, the mere act of existence is resistance. And the letter from the academics in Gaza that I mentioned earlier ends with this. The rebuilding of Gaza's academic institutions is not just a matter of education, it is a testament to our resilience, determination and unwavering commitment to securing a future for generations to come. The fate of higher education in Gaza belongs to the universities in Gaza, their faculty, staff and students, and to the Palestinian people as a whole. We appreciate the efforts of peoples and citizens around the world to bring an end to this ongoing genocide. We call upon our colleagues in the homeland and internationally to support our steadfast attempts to defend and preserve our universities for the sake of the future of our people and our ability to remain on our Palestinian land in Gaza. We built these universities from tents, and with the support of our friends, we will rebuild them again. And let this be a call to action for us, a reminder to us that as free people living free from bombardment, free from apartheid, free from settler colonialism, we have a duty to do what we can to keep our collective determination and to keep going. So keep boycotting apartheid Israel, become an apartheid-free zone, join the IPSC, insist that the Irish government enacts the Occupied Territories Bill, the Illegal Israeli Settlements Divestment Bill, sanction Israel, end trade, get the US military out of Shannon, expel the Israeli ambassador, The Irish government is riding high now, they think, but there is a general election coming and we have to hold their feet to the fire. Keep working for a world free of war and bombs and hate and racism, where the prisoners are free, the refugees return, Gaza is rebuilt and Palestine is free. All our love and solidarity, as always, from Limerick to our Palestinian sisters and brothers in 14 Palestine, Gaza, the West Bank, in 48 and in the refugee camps, in exile and here. Limerick stands with Palestine always. End Israeli apartheid, end the occupation, end the siege of Gaza, end Israeli genocide. Free Palestine!